And now, on to our main topic here on Mastering Dungeons. We are going to do a deep dive into our experiences at Gamehole Con. And we're doing this because last week we talked about sort of how to become a game designer or things you should think about if you want to be a game designer. And then we thought, we really didn't talk about what we did or learned at Gamehole Con. And
Hmm.
it would be great to sort of break it down to show why you might want to go if you can, afford to, if you have the time, if you have the energy to do so, and maybe even some pitfalls to avoid certain things at
Yeah.
conventions. And I will go into that for myself. So with that, we're going to sort of break down what we did at Gamehole and what we learned along the way. Is there anything you want to add to that, Teos, before we jump in?
I mean, yeah, you said a part there that I want to just reinforce that is the cost and the time of conventions, right? One of the interesting things that happened during the pandemic, especially around Gen Con, was a bunch of companies saying, wow, because I couldn't go to Gen Con as a company, I saved a bunch of money. I had all this
Mhm.
extra time. I had all this extra energy. And it caused people to rethink things a bit. Now, I think they all have gone back to having booths anyway, or most of them. But it
Right.
did cause folks to reflect a bit. And I think that is really important to say, like, hey, conventions sound great on paper, but they do
Mhm.
take your energy. They do require a bunch of time. You always think it's going to take less time than it does to prepare for them. It takes a bunch of money. There are ways to save on money, save on time, but overall, it's really easy to find yourself spending a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy, and that's not inconsequential. So it's worth kind of keeping in mind. And if you're a person who thinks, "Oh, I can't afford to go to conventions," don't go. you know,
Mhm.
or if you're like, "I can't possibly do this because I have to get product out the door." Great, stay on target, right? Like stay on your targets, whether they're financial or time or whatever. It's fine. But there are opportunities, and for those who are interested, then I think it's great to review, what does Gamehole
Mhm.
offer, and
Right.
how we approached it, what we did, what we learned from it.
Yeah. So before we jump into the actual schedule, two things happened with me that made this different than previous Gamehole cons and previous conventions. The first was normally I set aside time to play some games, to have meetings, sort of outside of the con schedule itself. During my free time at this con, though, I was working at the Ghostfire Gaming booth, which Ghostfire had for the first time at Gamehole Con this year. So that sort of cut down on the number of things I could do.
Mm.
The second thing was I had a writing deadline of Monday on a separate project that I needed to spend about 2 hours a day while I was at the convention to finish. So right there is, 4 hours at the booth, 2 hours of doing other work. There's 6 hours of my day already shot before I
Wow.
even. So,
I
uh,
don't know. I see you at this convention, and you managed to have pep and vigor. I don't know how you do it.
I
LARPing?
can't. My doctor tells me that I'm not allowed to reveal the concoction that I take in order to maintain all of
I
this.
think Sean Merwin is secretly a time traveler sent
Uh,
back to save the world's role playing games, and
oh,
cannot share all the technology that fuels him. He's an android. I
exactly,
say he
exactly.
like you're not right here. I'm looking at you. You're an
Right.
android.
I am a he
Mm-hmm.
mostly. But we got to Madison, Wisconsin, where Gamehole Con was held, and touchdown airplane. What do you do, Teos?
I usually get in. Flying from Portland's terrible, so it's like I have to either show up like very late in the day or very early. And so I did the red eye. I grab the coffee. I check in early. I shower,
Mhm.
and then I go down to the lobby and immediately start seeing all kinds of cool people, which is great because the first day pre-con is like people day, and I'm an
Mhm.
extrovert, so that's easy.
Yeah.
And it's just wonderful. I mean, it's amazing how many people I know now in this industry and how awesome it is to see everybody. What's your
Mhm.
first day like?
It's pretty much the same. I either fly in, so I get there midday Wednesday, or drive in Tuesday night, stay halfway, and then drive the rest of the way, still getting there around noon. And it's
Hmm.
sort of the same thing. Get myself together, start walking around, and I'm an introvert. And so it's hard, not because I don't enjoy people, because I do, but I'll be talking with three people and I'll look and I'll see three more people. And my first thought is I have to talk to them or they will feel like I'm ignoring them. So I try to talk to, and then three other people come. So now I'm like, but these other three, I really need to talk to them because we're on a project together. Right. And so all this is going on in my head and I'm trying to juggle, how do I handle all of this? And now I'm like in full freak out mode,
And then
but
someone
trying to,
says, "What do you think?" And you're like, "I wasn't listening."
I haven't heard anything that you've said for the last half hour, but I agree explicitly.
I have kind of the thing that happens to me more is that I will see somebody and it'll be like, oh, sweet. Well, if I saw him today, I'm certainly going to see him several times at the convention. And for some
Hmm.
people, that's true. Like, it's always great how you'll see certain people over and over and you're like, hey, hey, and
Hmm.
you just feel like I saw that person so much. And then I saw Dan Dillon, like, as I was rushing to a seminar and I was like, oh, Dan, you're here. I can't wait to talk to you. And I never saw him again. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
no, and so you just never know.
Yeah. I think the same thing happened to me now that I think about it. I talked last year at Gamehole Con, I talked to him for like 4 hours
Yeah.
one night,
Yep.
just just with a couple other
Same.
people. And this time I don't even know if I saw him. And if I did, it was, hey, I'll catch you later, and never did.
Yeah, it was wild.
Uh, But the first thing that happens for some of us at Gamehole is if you're a guest, they have a dinner, and Alex is kind enough to bus us to his restaurant,
Yeah.
and it's really nice to start the show with a nice meal, and catch up with the people, your old friends, new friends, people you've been near but haven't spoken to, in sort of a peaceful environment.
Yeah.
It can get a little hectic even there, but
Yeah.
at least it's you can sort of sit down and catch your breath. Uh,
Yeah. It's a
when we're
fantastic event, and you get to see the
yeah,
game hall, right? And I
right.
remember, listening to you and Chris Nizak talk about your first trips to the game hall and the amazing collection that Alex Kammer has. And it's incredible. And he's got Monty Cook's gaming table, and then he has just all these kinds of neat things on the walls, and all the dragon heads, and just copies upon copies of rare things, right? Multiple versions
Right.
of Dragon number one from Dragon magazine, and just yeah, on and on, right? And it's just so impressive to see that space, and the love he has for the hobby is so clear there. Love that, and then everybody who comes up is sharing their love for all these things. Whether they're new or old, it's great, and yeah, just seeing incredible people that make this hobby what it is fantastic. So you start on just super great
Yeah.
vibe.
And then on Wednesday night, even if you're not a guest, there is a reception generally at the Sheraton Hotel, which is across the street from the convention center. And so you can go there and you can chat up more people, and you
Yeah,
could, right, again, more food,
yeah,
drink, entertainment, people. It's a great way to kick off the convention.
yeah, absolutely. Really nice. Gets everybody in a super excellent vibe. Which this is a convention that has a really nice vibe in that way around community, and so this I think both these events help establish that.
Mhm. So then you get a good night's sleep, I'm sure. I know that younger Shawn would been up till 3 a.m. and then fall asleep at 5 and then wake up at 7. Old Shawn now goes to bed at a reasonable hour to wake up early to start work the next day. So Thursday morning, what did you do and what did you learn?
So I started to hit the ground running with DMing the 50th anniversary game. So I did not stay up super late because I knew I had to be on point to run a great game for a table, and I did. I had a full table, ran people through this 1 hour game that was all the gold dragon themed, and it's short. There wasn't a whole lot to it. There's a nice review of it on Andy Demps's website, and he talks about his Gamehole experience. So I ran that. That was fun. It used Dwarven Forge terrain, which was great. And
Mhm.
from that, it was just, it's always so interesting to run a 1 hour game and see
Mhm.
what you can do with it. And I actually really like the format. Like I love running 1 hour games because it is both a hard thing to do. It keeps you focused, but I think it provides a lot of fun to players because everybody knows that this time is short and precious, and so everybody makes the most of it. So I had great. That's always for me filled with lessons around DMing when I do 1 hour games. And then I went immediately and ran to join Brewer's Heist, an adventure run by David Ewald, who has written for a number of things, including he wrote the book of Dice and Men. And in Of Dice and Men is this neat combination of sort of talking about his campaign and then the history of D&D. And it was fun because he describes his campaign setting, and I found it really evocative. And I was, always wondering, I wonder what his campaign world would be like to play with him. And so this was a little bit of a window into that, with this kind of story around tainted brew and a bit of a mystery, and then you kind of end up breaking into a place and trying to solve the problem. We had a blast. It was really good. Nice 4 hour game.
Mhm.
You want to take a couple things you did on Thursday?
Sure. So Thursday morning, I originally had signed up to play Call of Cthulhu because
Hmm.
I always say I love the setting, don't love the rules. And so every couple of years, I try to play it with a different group, a different set of folks to see what am I missing? What am I
Yep.
missing here? But like I said, I also got called upon to work at the booth. So I had to cancel that game
Yeah.
and go work at the booth, which was a really actually good experience because sometimes when you're a guest or when you're a DM, you get caught up in the hustle here, hustle there. You only meet six people at a time. Or if you're in meetings, you're only talking with the same people you just met Wednesday night uh, at the guest dinner. So this gave me a chance to sit still and have people walk past me. And so I got to sign books. I got to talk with people about their experiences with the products that we're making. And it was fun. It was a good experience. I wouldn't want to do it
Nice.
8 hours a day for
Sure.
5 days in a row, but to do it for like 4 hours, sell some books, talk about your inspiration, hear what other people are doing with your work is really it's really fun. It's sort of
Yeah.
rejuvenating a bit.
Yeah. I've enjoyed booth work. I haven't done it for the RPG industry, but when I've done it for my day job quite
Mhm.
some time ago, I did enjoy it. And it is kind of neat to watch you get a good feel for attendees, right? Because you're
Mhm.
watching the myriad of people that walk by and interact. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what other things did you do on Thursday?
I went to a D&D history roundtable. So there were a bunch of 1 hour seminars that had really brilliant people talking about the history of D&D. And this was just a general sort of how the game started. And it was John Peterson, right, who writes Playing at the World and all these amazing books that really, I mean, he's one of the best scholars on D&D. I love his writing, and he's the same speaking. He has just endless amounts of knowledge he can tap into on the history of the game. And he was joined by David Ewalt and Mike Whitwer, and the three of them it was a really great. I mean, most of it was stuff I'd heard before, but to just hear them say it and the way they paint the picture of how D&D developed was just another kind of reinforcement of kind of understanding how this game began in such fragile ways and became such a juggernaut. And they tried to make it kind of all the way through. It started with a heavy emphasis on the beginning, but they made it all the way through fifth edition in 1 hour, which is impressive.
That's cool. That's cool. The next thing on your list is the running your trap design in the Dungeon of Doom adventure. I want to save that because
Sure.
I played in that later.
Yeah.
So let's do it then. What was the Coriolis adventure?
So this was a little funny. Despite all my planning, I have like 9 spreadsheets of any convention I want to attend. And at the end of it, something surprises me and I go, what? And this was one of those where I had two goals. I might run a Coriolis campaign. So I want to really understand the rules. So therefore, I'm going to sign up for 4 hour adventure. So one was it finished in about 2 hours, just a little over 2 hours. That I didn't expect, but it just somehow we ended early. The other thing is that it was using the new Coriolis rules from the Kickstarter that's not out yet. And I think I
Mm,
could have found that out if I'd read more carefully, and somehow I missed it.
mm,
So I was like, oh, okay, well, so I did not become more expert at it, but I did have a blast. And Coriolis continues to be an RPG that if you want like high science fiction, right? Like the stars and ancient civilizations and, just big sci-fi topics in your game. This is a great RPG for that. And the game has both editions have great premises around them, and really fun dynamics. And you get the feeling of what you're doing, right? We were crawling into an area that's sort of irradiated and worried about it, what our suit would handle and what we would find. And it just felt absolutely like you're in one of those kinds of movies or books, and just dripping with cool sci-fi stuff, right? You just felt it. Very evocative, very awesome. So I had a blast, even though it was only 2 hours and not the edition I was looking for, but yeah, still fun. How about you?
That's funny. I played in Bill Benham's quote 4 hours of D&D madness. So I love Bill, and I don't get a chance to talk to him a lot. So I thought, let me get into his game. Let me see how he runs it. He's a Wizards of the Coast employee, right? Let's see
producer.
what he does. And the first thing I did was sit down, and all the other players were there, and we were chatting. And Bill wasn't there yet. And one guy said, "Wait, are you Sean Merwin?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh my." And he pulls out Acquisitions Incorporated. And he said, "I was coming to get you to sign this, but you're here. So could you sign it?" I'm like, "Absolutely." So, I signed it. We were chatting. And then Bill came because he had gone, of course, to the wrong room because he's Bill.
Yep.
And he comes in and he sits down, and the guy's like, "Oh, would you sign Acquisitions Incorporated?" And I was like, "Huh. Bill, and Bill's like, "Oh, this was like the first book I worked on when I joined Wizards." And I was like, I had no idea, right? Even though we're all involved in the
Right.
creation of this book,
yeah,
Bill worked on it as well as in a producer role, I assume. And I never even knew. So that was just
funny.
Those are the kind of funny things that come up when you're and then Bill ran the 2024 version of this adventure with the sort of newish 2024 characters, pre-gens. As you would imagine with Bill, it was a wild, wacky time.
Absolutely.
Lots of fun players. So it's good to just sit down and play.
Yeah.
Even if it's a game that you don't know for sure.
Yeah. 100%.
And then to end up a busy day, I ran my adventure We All Fall Down, set in the Aurora setting from Ghostfire Gaming. It's sort of a beginner adventure to introduce players to that setting, what's different between that setting and other 5e settings, pre-generated characters. And then I sat at a table with Scott Gray, and I just lost it. His partner and his friend were both there.
Yes, it'll come to
Colleen,
me,
and it's right on my tongue. Anyway, there, Jeffrey Miller was there, and then another player. Great players, great time. It sort of sets it up so they can do a lot of different things, but it focuses in on role playing as much as mechanics, and a good time overall.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. I heard some things about both that table and then another morning table where everybody just had a blast. And that was one of those events that I was like, how can I? Oh, I can't because I'm already booked for something else at the same slot. And
Yep. So Thursday's done. Friday, I wake up and I get to go to Teos's table to play traps.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Teos, we have been talking about doing this since Living Greyhawk days of filming a table being run and having the DM stop and look at the camera and say, what just happened here was this. And I changed the adventure, or I changed this, or I'm thinking along these lines to show. And that's what you did. And It was great. And I loved every second of it.
I honestly had no idea how this event would go. It started as, I think I'll do a seminar on creating traps. And then I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun if maybe I had something you could see, maybe I have Dwarven Forge terrain so you can actually look at it. I'm like, well, I don't know how you see that from afar in a seminar room. And I was like, what if you're standing around the table, and what if they're actually playing? And at some point I just was like, okay, stop and just do this. And I spent a lot of time, we talked about that, before a con, you don't think of, I at some point I even said to myself, I'll keep it simple and I'll only do this for this event. Oh my God. I made pre-gens with their own pre-gen one-page character sheet, so it'd be easy to see. And everybody played rogues, but a different species. And I used the 2024 rules so I could get to learn them. And then I took the Dungeon of Doom gauntlet that I'd done, which is a long trap-filled corridor and a little bit of the room before it, and walked through it. And we talked about the history of traps, and we talked about, why is this here? What's the intentionality behind the design? And we got to see kind of how it all plays, right? Because everybody's interacting, and all six rogues trying to take turns, handle things.
Mhm.
So I was really happy with how it went. From what you're talking about, that format of play to learn. And I'm actually really excited to do it again for other parts of the game
Sure.
as a way of, like, let's play through this while talking about what's going on here, right? Whether it's role playing or it's, puzzles exploration, right? Like that could be fun too
Mhm.
to do. So it's already in my
Yeah.
brain that at Gamehole I've got to do one like this, but different. And I like the 12 people format in that room that we ran it, which was a very quiet room. Thank goodness, because
Yes.
some of the other rooms are very loud.
Mhm.
So if I can get that same room, I definitely want to do this again because I really enjoyed the format. And I loved the
Yeah.
feedback from people. Like the back and forth was really cool, and the ideas, and yeah.
Yeah. No, it was great. And if you do it again, we need to record it.
Yeah.
And I know I'm volunteering you, Teos, to be recorded because
We'll talk to
you're the
Dante.
extrovert. There you go. Exactly. Dante,
Pay
help us
Dante
out.
dearly.
Yep. So that was both our Friday mornings.
Yeah.
Then did we both go off to the seminar about the open gaming license at that point?
I first did a I think first I did the making of D&D 3 panel. I remember this because I actually
Gotcha.
asked a question at the panel. So this was Peter Adkison and two other fine folks who were there, and I asked a question about the OGL, which was actually kind of fun, and because I had really wondered, right, like Ryan Dancy is always credited as sort of architecting the OGL, but if you listen to what Ryan said, it isn't what they actually did. And primarily
Mhm.
that Ryan's plan really seems to have been like, hey, we're only going to make core books.
Mhm.
And so my question was sort of, you never did that plan. Why did you not do that actual plan?
Mhm.
And Peter's Atkinson's first response, who had been the CEO of Wizards of the Coast was, like, we're not going to answer that. But then, and I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but the other
Jonathan
person,
Tweet.
no, it was more a guy who's played a business role, and I'm blanking on his name, but I'll
Yeah.
think of it at some point. But he actually started to answer it, and the answer they ended up both giving, because they did end up talking about it, is we expected the OGL to create for people to write the things we didn't want to write. And
Mhm.
instead, they had done the same kind of intelligence we had. And they knew that core books is what sells money. So they started making essentially core book type stuff.
Mhm.
And then there were obvious holes we had to fill. And we couldn't just not do anything. We
Yeah.
had to make all these other products as well. And, could never just leave it to others to do that and just live off the core books. But so I thought that was really kind of neat.
That is neat. Which then leads us into the seminar that you did with me, Elisa Teague, Mike Shea, and Mike Merles.
Yeah.
That was the five of us, and it was about the open gaming license era, which I first saw and went, "Oh, cool! Let's talk about third edition, right? And what the open gaming license did to that edition for the game, for freelancers, for wizards, for everybody." But of course, it turned into a discussion of the OGL crisis, so-called OGL crisis.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, I mean, I've heard it all before. I've talked it all through before. So I sort of tried to sit back and let other people say what they had to say about it.
What I heard from folks who attended it that they liked was that we kind of had points of disagreement with one another, which I think is
Mhm.
very illustrative of, it captures perfectly what this is all about, which is that there is no one way to look at this issue, especially the contentious things, right? So you can try to think of what does the company actually think, which Elisa Teague tried to sort of speak to that, and how she saw it as a person who has to worry about the products she creates for various companies and whether somebody else can touch them or not.
Right.
We hit it from the angles of, being a small creator, and it just, it was really, I thought that kind of diversity in our opinions was useful. It would have been nice if we talked a little bit about the impact it had on the industry, because it really is fantastic. And I think that topic of, say, contrasting third edition and fourth edition,
Mhm.
or fourth edition and fifth edition, right? Those are really fascinating ways to look at the effect that these things can have, especially around the popular game of D&D. But I think
Mhm.
it was still, I enjoyed it. So it was fun.
Yeah. What did you do after that?
I went to play historical figures in the journey to the San Dimas High School auditorium. And this was just absolutely wild game using the cipher system, where we all got to play in Bill and Ted's what's the name of the movie?
Just Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Excellent Adventure. Thank you. I'm running into the name of the second one. And in Excellent Adventure, the scene where the Bill and Ted have to go off and get Napoleon, and they leave everybody at the mall. That was the adventure.
Mhm.
And we had wild stallion guitar picks as our points we could spend to do cool things. And you had to stand up and say excellent and play the guitar, pretend to air guitar, if you wanted one back, and which of course I felt compelled to do. It was just such a fun game, just being completely ridiculous. I declared war on the Witch King because I saw that there was a skating rink park, and I thought there had to be some Witch King behind it, and that ended up being the head of security. And we led a mob against the mall, and there was a lot of blood spilled, and it was just completely excellent.
Yes, most excellent. Uh, I went and did a seminar on the Grim Hollow sneak peek for what was coming up in 2025 for Grim Hollow with Joe Rosso and Ben Byrne. And
Nice.
it's nothing that I need to go into again because I've talked about it many, many times.
It's great seeing Ben at the con, and everybody from the
Yeah.
Ghostfire team. There were really a number of folks there. Meeting Martin, that was awesome.
Mhm.
Dante, incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. What else did you do?
I did a learn to play the One Ring. I actually got 3 games of One Ring in, and 2 of them were the learn to play, which I guess Graham Ward helped write, which is super cool. And
Oh,
so
cool.
he ran actually part of it in a hotel room one night, and then I got to play the learn to play, which also used it, which really helped reinforce. This is where I did succeed in playing the One Ring and going through those mechanics. And I really enjoyed everything I saw about it. I later played a 4-hour adventure, which then was really cool to see the journey rules, the role playing. There's a name for the role playing rules as well, but they have a really neat way of choosing roles around combat,
Mhm.
exploration, or travel, and also role playing that really works quite well. And I am jazzed to play One Ring. That was great.
Cool.
After that, I went to a Chris Perkins signing, because Chris Perkins is one of those introverts that, like, if you don't go to the event that you know he will be there, you may never see him at the convention.
Mhm.
And so I went to the signing, and that's where I was able to confirm, as we reported at the show, on what his new role was, because there'd been a lot of confusion as to whether he was leaving or what exactly he was doing. So that was nice, and I got him to sign my Curse of Strahd book, which was cool. Um, and then I went to a really neat event that had been organized and funded through fantastic people. And this was a POC industry dinner, and it was really neat to meet with folks from really diverse backgrounds with a lot of energy and desire to figure out this industry and find how to work within the space. So those of us who were a little older, we tried to share knowledge and make connections and help create connections.
Mhm.
I'll just go ahead and say now that then the next day there was a BIPOC mixer at Monte Cook Games, and so this kind of carried forward into that, where we tried to also kind of have some influence and make connections and help people kind of do some really cool things. And some of the things I heard about were really exciting, and I'm excited to see if they can happen. So that was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I went and worked at the booth in the afternoon. So
Hmm.
that was my afternoon. And then I went back and worked in my room at night. So that was
Hmm.
me. Anything else on Friday?
I hung out with Graham Ward, Jeff, Shu, a number of people from our Discord. So it was super fun to get together and play one ring, roll some dice, and just talk. The Sheraton is a little loud, so it's very vibrant and exciting. But it was just awesome to see everybody, and it's nice because you see enough people, like you'd see Keith Amon, and then then we'd be at the food carts and oh hey, and meet up again, and so just every little one thing that's nice about conventions like this is when you have even a short touch point with somebody, it makes it that much easier to meet with them again when you see them, right? And so I love that the more you go to these conventions and have these little touch points, you feel comfortable just hanging out and talking about things and asking questions, getting advice from folks.
Mhm. On Saturday, we shared another panel, Making D&D Funny, the design of the Acquisitions Incorporated book, which was lots of fun to talk about, share some of the stories, and give some pointers on trying to make D&D funny and how hard it can be and how careful you need to be in doing so.
And we got to share the news that you and Scott and I worked on a second Mini Ack Inc. project, which was part of their Kickstarter to bring the Ack Inc. show back. And that went out to backers this last week, but it was backers at a very high level, like I think $300 on up. So they're also looking at ways to make this available for sale because there's some really neat features in this. They called it a module, but it's like a mini source book that
Right.
extends, has ideas for franchises. It has ideas for kind of campaigns you could run. It has neat spells, very funny spells, and all kinds of stuff. And so we spilled some of the beans at the panel. But yeah, I'm excited to see how people like it, and hopefully to see more people be able to get it because it's a really, we put a lot of work into it. So fun to see.
Yeah, I snuck away and got a 1 hour D&D anniversary first edition game.
Nice.
Which was super fun. I mean, super simple. It definitely did not use all of the first edition AD&D rules, but it was fun to have. We had 4 players, and 3 of us were very much understanding of the AD&D zeitgeist of how it's supposed to work. And then we had one 5th edition player who was newish to 5th edition, never played. And so she would like roll a die and do that well. She's like, do I get a reroll? How can I get a reroll? And we're all like, yeah, reroll. Oh, that's funny. And
yeah.
We succeeded with only one character dying.
Wow. Nice.
By basically leaving the wizard to die. But we were able to escape. But it was fun to forget the character sheet for a minute and just do the thing.
Yeah.
Right. Do the weird thing. Throw the thing through the thing. And I don't need an intelligence check. I don't need this. Just do and see what happens.
Yeah. So I played AD&D, sort of, with Ed Greenwood. It's hard to talk about this game for a number of reasons. I will say that I think if anybody from Wizards of the Coast had been watching this game, they probably would have been horrified at how Blackstaff Tower was portrayed and all of the people inside of it. I was pretty horrified by everything I saw, and I felt like every NPC hit on me. I still love Ed Greenwood, but it was not an experience I'd recommend. But what was one of the things that was interesting along those lines is it was an advanced Dungeons and Dragons game where nobody made a roll. And I tried to at one point cast a spell, but maybe Ed didn't hear me, or maybe he didn't want me to cast a spell, so I just didn't, because I was trying to figure out what was happening. I wanted to cast ESP. So it sure was not an AD&D experience. It was an Ed Greenwood experience with all that entails.
Sure. Cool. And I got to do the Eldritch Lore cast live with Ben, of course, Dante on the audio and video, and then Latia Jaques and Joe Rosso joining us to talk about various topics. And you can always go find that up on YouTube. Awesome. If you want to know what happened there. Anything else Friday that really caught you, or Saturday that really caught your attention?
It was a great day. I went to the 5e panel with Mike Merles, Peter Lee, and Rodney Thompson, and just seeing all 3 of them in the same place was heartwarming. I love the design that they did for 5e and previous to 5e, their 4e design as well. And so just hearing how they approached the project was really cool. I did a 4-hour Magnus Archives RPG by Monte Cook Games in the Monte Cook Games area. They've got a lovely play space there. And that was fun. It was just sort of like a Delta Green, a little bit Cthulhu, a little bit investigative type mix. And we had a blast doing bad British accents and solving crimes that involve horrible amounts of insects. But it was cool. We set it all on fire and called it a win. And then I played that 4-hour One Ring that I talked about. And I loved that experience, as I said. So One Ring is high on my list. So Saturday was just one of those exhaustive, wall-to-wall fun times for me. and it's that point where you suddenly go like, oh, wait, this con is about to end.
Yeah. Oh, but it didn't end, Teos, because
Nope.
on Sunday morning, the highlight of everyone's show, I'm sure, was Mastering Dungeons Live, which, as we said previously, was so nice to see that
Yeah,
full room.
it was great.
It really meant a lot to me, and I
Incredible.
think to you too. And then it was the sad flight. Well, generally it would be a sad flight home, but I got to go home with all of the Ghostfire team, where we had a week of work here in lovely Fredonia, New York.
That's great.
So
But that's great
I
because you had
didn't.
that energy of all
Yeah,
this.
the energy kept going. So Joe and Martin and Dante and Ben, we were here. Dante, doing his thing. The rest of us planning future projects and getting some writing done and ideating, if you will. It was fun.
Well, I love Dante's mastery. He's like, I can send you the files from the Mastering Dungeons Live, and they were edited already. I'm like, oh my god, like this is and just beautiful. Like I said to him, I'm a little worried that our live show sounds better than our recorded studio shows, but we'll go with it.
Yeah.
I definitely got a lot of energy from this convention. I felt like I made a lot of connections with people that I care about and some new folks that I had only met, a little bit or on the internet, and I became closer to them. I definitely got back and I was like, okay, time to make videos, time to, do more because it filled me with energy. It's also coming in time with one of my many day jobs has ended, so it gave me a little more time, but it's really filled me with energy. And part of that was folks being nice enough to say, hey, I like success in RPGs, or I love this book, or, asking me to sign something or any of that. And boy, that makes a big difference, right? When you just kind of remember why you're doing this, remember that when you do this hard work, at the end of it is somebody feeling thankful for it. It makes us thankful, right? And yeah, I came back super, super energized from it.
For sure. So with that, I want to thank everyone for listening out there. If you are a patron, thank you so much for your support. You can become a patron. It's pretty simple. You go to patreon.com/masteringdnd. And if you're a patron, we thank you. If you're a Master of Realms supporter, we give you a shout out in our show notes. And if you are a Master of the Multiverse, and the list is growing, we thank you by reading your name. Keith Ammon of The Monsters Know What They're Doing. Lou Anders of Lazy Wolf Studios. Craig Bailey. Dave Bastiensen. Steve Bissonette. Merrick Blackman. Calvin Bridges Avalos. Evil John. Will Doyle. Andy Edmonds at nerdronomicon.com. James Fisher. Scott Fitzgerald Gray at Insane Angel Studios. Will Harshman of Runeforged Tabletop Gaming. Ben Heisler and Paige Lightman. Sean Hurst. Mark and Mary's Gaming Compound. The Mighty Jerd. JR of The Twilight Perspective. Brian King. Jim Klingler, a.k.a. DM Prime Mover. Chad Lynch. Paul Mata. The Mathemagician. Eric Mengi. Anna B. Meyer at Fantasy Cartography. Trey McLemore. John Mickey, Sean Molly, Falcon Neal, Tom Nelson of the Tech of Player Safety, Mighty Zeus, Phil Wirt from the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, Frog Prince at Tentacles Squelching Wetly, Post Fiction RPG Audio, Robert Pasley, Vladimir Prunner from Croatia, Hugnus, Ozymandias Rex, Runner Rick, Chance Russo at Drago Russo, Andy Shockney, Krishna Simosa, Josh and Lee Wanika of the Tabletop Journeys podcast. Talos the Stormlord. Jeremy Talaman from the D&D and TV podcast. Tres. Joe Tyler, Marcelo de Velasquez, the Valiant DM, James Walton, Graham Ward, Jason Ward from Accidental Cyclops Games, Javier Waziak, Chris Webster, Zach Types, and Zawalt Winfrey. Thank you so much, all of you, for your support. Even if you can't become a patron, we appreciate you listening, and we hope that you will leave us a review either on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to this podcast. You can also go to YouTube and do the like and subscribe and all of those fancy things. Teos, what are you up to?
I just put out a video looking at the Bastion system, and because I know I have thoughts and my thoughts aren't everyone's, I started with what's awesome about it. And tomorrow's video will be a little more critical and peel behind into it. So hopefully folks who just want to be like happy land can look at what's cool and how to make the most of that. And tomorrow, if you want to peel back the layers and see that, then you can do so. So that's Monday and Tuesday. So by the time this comes out, they're both available.
Awesome. And you can find me on all the socials at Shawn Merwin, or you can follow the podcast on those same socials at Mastering D&D. And again, you can also go to the YouTube channel for Mastering Dungeons and see our faces as you listen to our voices. So we have recapped the news, we have recapped some questions, and we have recapped Gamehole Con. What are we going to do now?
I'm going to see if you can use the new weapon mastery feats to dual read dungeon master guides.
Ooh, yes, that is definitely a property of the Evil Eye weapon.
Yeah, alt cover, normal cover, simultaneous. See which one's better.
Roll for stress.
With a capital letter.
Yes.